among the stars, and I'm sure she's returned there because many people that are star babies, okay, these are star seeds or star babies, they like looking down on the planet and observing and showing themselves as many planets or stars out there. So I don't know how many of you have ever heard that, but this is a truth in the ascension reality that you can always go back and be a planet. You can be a cosmos, a galaxy, if you graduate with that many levels. Now, my graduation, I'll go back to the second grade, going over to White Sands, and you'll know why I've been telling you all of this. When I went over there, I had already been taken at the age of 4 from a field down from my house on South 7th Street, Monroe, Louisiana, up to a ship, to a family that I felt a different love. If you've ever felt euphoric or very much in love, like I can't explain it. You have to feel it. It's like a endorphin high, I guess, or like a gambling feeling that you can get, and you have to leave it. It makes you feel love, but it's agape, but it's a transition, but a magnet that pulls you. And some people go with the electronic behavior of your nervous system, empathetic and paraempathetic. We have two systems. One, paraempathetic, is on what they call automatic pilot. That helps you breathe and heart. And when you see someone die, like I saw my daughter, you watch all these things happen and your body wanting to remain alive, and hers really did. Her spirit was very powerful, but there was one little entity, one tiny little piece that they could not get in cancer out of her bone sinew. She had cancer of the bone that she got from painting, and the chemicals in the paint, and the chemicals and the clean up the chemicals of paint, and it's also in the ocean. But that's in this reality. So where it's the road meets the rubber, as we used to say, as I was a truck driver in this reality, is the fact that regardless of how woo-woo, and the woo-woo world, they like to say, of those that study all things that are not physical, it's paranormal. It's considered not the normal. And she was very much into esoterics, but the most worldly religion with Christ that I'd ever known. Well, definitely, she called him her father, and she painted a church, and she saw an angel in white kneeling at the altar at the church here at Unity, and it's grown unbelievably since she painted that church. Not Unity, Liberty Church. It's like a Unity church. Pastor Rice and his wife run it, but she knew and told them that was her father's church, and they had to understand her language. She was very much endowed with Christ and talking of him as her father, and her portal through ascension, which she would use, and she believed in being buried in her body and that it will be raised. She's one of those that believes her body in her religion was Ascension Church Ohana, and that Christ is the head of the church, unwavering. So he is the magic and the supernatural being that came and went and showed people in the history, and she studied unbelievable. And so I'm so glad that Richard and I found the courage to come out on her behalf with at least the words and in writing and in electronics to help other people find their path. If it is going to be that through Yeshua, which she believed was his name, as the many Jesuses. And where I'm going with this is the extraterrestrial beings, they were like that feeling you get when I get it when I'm leaving my body, when I know I'm passing. When I had her, I literally died, and so did she. So I didn't get to ask extraterrestrials like mundane questions that were, in my, you think, well, when you get there, you're going to ask all these questions. No, you're caught up in such a feeling of awe, of being in a oneness of love, in a presence of a deity that is so much higher than yourself. You really are just there to be and to grok or to receive love. And that love is created in energy that we operate at the 7th level. And that 7th level is like the last thing to go. They say that you're only dead when your heart stops. So that's why they gave her a number in the morning when 2 women had to come in and call it, which was after she'd actually passed. But all this is relevant to each one of us as an individual deity in a human form. So in order to be an immortal essence, one must first learn what that means. And many people on their inner awakening of themselves have not studied their vehicle, their body. I suggest on Netflix there is I guess it's a series on the human body, but you may want to watch that. I've watched it, fell asleep during the night watching it, but it will really help you understand how your body works. And it's very colorful, and you'll see how your whole body works. But then the essence that I'm talking about in White Sands, New Mexico, was that. But it was inside a creative consciousness of what we call a spacecraft that is part of disclosure of White Sands and Area 51 and all those things that we celebrate about our level that we don't understand, the supernatural mysteries between us walking on the planet and those coming and going as Jesus did, as others did in spacecraft. Now, when we talk about those from the heavens came, they've never stopped. And that's why Richard was telling you that there's other beings on the planet that are tribing up or teaming up based on their cultural heritage and their wisdom and their essence and their mind of the Ascension Masters. And also what we call the Galaxy Federation, which I believe the name was adapted because of so many people that believed in the future as Star Trek that we have seen on television from the 60s moving forward. That is the best utopian world among officers in space. And what I saw, they were much more angelic behavior, but there are those that are separated that we can talk about that are of these grand designs or grand masters or the grand architects of the universe, and they know who they are. They're embedded in all our societies at all levels of creation, so we can level up in the empirical status of being. Now, I'll tell you what I know when my husband and daughter were creating this reality with me, and my mother, a historian and a publicist. She never believed in UFOs at all, and that in her mind, she never got past that the Bible was a fairy tale. And she never was a Latter-day Saint or believed it was believed in the words written by a man as far as the translation can be correctly transposed or transcribed, as many that we call evangelicals and those that believe only what they've heard. I saw many people and lived with many people, at least for 20 years in one lump sum of 20 years in Kentucky, that so many people still couldn't read or write in the hills of Kentucky. That's Mitch McConnell land. I don't think he cares about those people, personally speaking, about people whether they can read or write in the hills of Kentucky, because they've never taken on helping those people learn how to take care of themselves, and they turn around and use it on the culture they lived in. So as the Ascension and those of the pastors in that particular state, we do discuss the levels of ascension accordingly based on what you can grok or learn or educate oneself into maintaining food, clothing, shelter, of course, water, information to keep your person, yourself alive first, and then it's always been families, those you're born into, which we say biologically your DNA family, and those people have not really educated from time to time in the hills of Kentucky. I'm using just that as an example because it's the most frequently mind-bending, our mind wanting to understand why society has not moved forward in the Appalachians after what Richard described as Civil War. And some of them as coal miners. Their family were coal miners, and I lived among them. And that's how I got my first event in Ace Folk Life and worked with the Bill Monroe Foundation here. However, none of them ever even were told or expected to talk about UFOs or my life in and out of an extraterrestrial involvement in my DNA, which was because we stayed with an uncle that worked at the Los Alamos Missile Range, and when I went in second grade and remembered them, and went on Indian base because he was married to a full 100% tribeswoman or Indian woman, and at the same time, when the extraterrestrial ship came down, I told his two children that now my uncle and aunt brought me over with my grandmother from Monroe. Now, I willed myself to go there. I made that happen through the Indian that was my uncle Rufus Henry, and he drove us Route 66 from Monroe, which is like I-20 now, I guess, all the way out to Los Alamos and White Sands Missile Range. And then we played in the White Sand Dunes. And the extraterrestrials put my cousins to sleep on the high. One was 10 and 13, a boy 10 and a girl 13. But they were the ones that showed that we were all laying on the very top point of the White Sand Dunes at the park. The adults were down at a cement picnic table and along the highway. So they had let us finally go play after we had a lunch. But we were up there 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the evening. It was starting to get dusk. But right before that, a ship came overhead, and they pointed it out, the 13-year-old and the 10, yeah, look, I think he called it a spaceship. Trying to remember exact words. But that came down, and it set below. But as it flew over, I could see it and was watching them, and they laid down and went to sleep. And I was like, what? What do you do? And they went to sleep. So I was chosen, as many of us are. We can't tell you why some will be going to sleep and others will be awakened. But I was chosen to go down and meet my Earth family, or my extraterrestrial family, again for the second time. So I believe that they monitor us, these levels of our families, our DNA. Like Richard has said, he had an implant. I may have one still. I don't know that they need them. I was never told. From what I can see, extraterrestrials don't need those, at least the kind that I've worked with. But I'm told I have something in my back that can't be explained. The attorney told me himself after seeing the doctors, all the work in the case for me. But the point is, these extraterrestrials come and go as they please. They have various levels, entities. Angelic realm is one level, we understand. We know some of them are benevolent and some of them are malevolent. And the archons and the deities, there is actually a planet out there that was, we named it Archon, but there are planets and there's books out there you can read, including Lynn Caston's latest. He actually wrote, I believe, Robert Morning Sky's story that was in, his grandfather had told him about extraterrestrials. And they came from out there in a place and they looked more like grasshoppers, I believe, or locust or something like that. I've forgotten the story. But each person has their story. But my story is after that time, they left me alone until I started coming of age as a teenager. And they started teaching me psychic abilities. Again, I learned them from the time I was a 2-year-old in my room, and my mother couldn't see them. So beings would come. I remember a little